At this point, I don't think there was any real discussion about the extent that he uses, misuses, or abuses. Johnny Depp seems to have processed the toxic impact of this substance abuse. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Dr. B Addiction Recovery. The question I'm going to dissect today a little bit is, did Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial contribute anything positive or negative to substance abuse and mental health, as far as the people that are suffering from it, the stigma associated with each, the treatment that people can reach out to? Did it contribute in any way, shape, or form to any of that? Let me get started. As I go through this, please note that if I discuss Johnny Depp or Amber Heard, I am not making a diagnosis. I'm just giving you my thoughts and feedback given what I saw as everyone else. Let's get into it. Who is Johnny Depp from what we can see, and what his relationship with substance abuse, as much as we can tell from what's out there, so what I've read, and quite a bit of the trial that I went through. Johnny Depp himself is a pretty likable character, a pretty good actor, well known out there. But when you look at this guy, he really shaped and formed himself in the cultural milieu of the 90s, or rather the pop cultural milieu of the 90s, which was in many ways retro for certain subpopulations and segments. Now, he's a little bit older to be catching on in the 90s. It should have been late 80s, but it was the 90s. What is that subculture? That subculture that he really kind of embraced was this rebellious drug using group of literary figures, artistic heroes. Some of these names that I'm sure he's familiar with and he embraces are people like Bukowski, the Beatnik generation, Jack Kerouac. And as we know, he got heavily involved with Hunter S. Thompson, who was a pretty heavy alcoholic. He eventually shot himself in the head. All of these figures I have nothing against. In fact, I also have come to appreciate them, especially in my youth. So I have some familiarity with him, but he embraced that culture, that brazen drug use for the sake of the drug use itself, and literary, artistic, psychological expression. That's that. No big deal. But that is what he embraced for all of the reasons that he has described, and it makes good sense. He has a history of trauma, and he has always induced a fantasy worlds where he can escape to, live in, and hide. Within that culture, or within that culture, he also had decided to embrace what he considers truth, a certain integrity, a certain macho, which means you are rebellious and you do move forward in a way that's counter establishment, but at the same time, you adhere and you embrace and you, in fact, fight for the poor. Through all of this, Johnny Depp also became a multi-millionaire, gazillionaire, billionaire. I guess it was through his Pirates of the Penzance movies. What did this do in many ways? Well, he was able to sustain his drug use, misuse, abuse. By the way, from what I have seen, he's what would potentially be called a garbage truck, in the sense that he is a polysubstance user, polypharmacy user, uh, in addition to the fact that he has quite a bit of tendency for heavy drinking. All of that said, he's been able to maintain and sustain that for many years. Okay. This is what the average Joe sees. This is what the public sees through this trial. In addition, those that probably admire him or are fans of his and are probably familiar with his storyline and life are aware of this. Here's a guy who's extremely successful. He's a good looking guy. He's done quite a bit, and he sustains and maintains a drug habit, and in addition to the alcohol. throughout the trial, the sense that I got, and he had a doctor that apparently was paying $100,000 a month for. Uh, Johnny, I think for pennies on the dollar, I could do much better. Um, he engaged with this doctor that I guess helped him in some sort of a detox from opiates. And at this point, I don't think there was any real discussion about the extent that he uses, misuses, or abuses alcohol or drugs. But I would suspect that there's still misuse and some abuse. He's interesting, but it seems like, given the fact that it seems like his pattern of use, although it escalates and peaks in really bad ways, he's able to go up and down and have periods of sobriety. Okay, fine. This was absolutely presented in the trial where one could get that out of everything that was out there. My fear, by the way, one more thought, and this is my thought, although at an intellectual level, Johnny Depp seems to have processed the toxic impact of this substance abuse and what it has had in his life. In fact, I heard him make some references to pathophysiology or pharmacology regarding dopamine and serotonin. He understands it. He's done quite a bit of reading, but I don't believe at a deep emotional level he has abandoned it. Why? I think the money and the support network around him has allowed him to maintain this. Now, whether it's verbally stated or not, millions of people watch this, and I do have some fears, nothing on his part that he did on purpose, but I do have some fears that it sort of collaborates and validates one's substance abuse and thinking they can potentially get away with it. That's concerning. Again, this is no fault of his. And that concerns me a little bit. Nevertheless, all things are relative. It's very possible that that very substance abuse got him in trouble with this relationship in the first place because there seemed to be a need to further his fantasy life by getting involved in a relationship that was nothing more than pulling him away from reality. That's what she was. She was nothing more than a drug that appeared to be sucking him in. And on her part, she appeared to be looking for a fantasy getaway as well. And I mean fantasy in the most technical sense of the word. All of that said, I think the substance abuse is not necessarily the thing we should look for in that this trial had any positive impact on the state of substance abuse nor the stigma of it, because it shows a man that can sustain the substance abuse for an extremely long time without some of the consequences that I see every day: homelessness, prison, extreme poverty, HIV, hepatitis C, etc., etc. You guys know the rest. There was something that I do feel had a tremendous positive impact that came out of this trial. Now, this could be a little bit controversial because for some reason we can't get away from some of the extreme biases and prejudices that we have in our society. And for some reason, being fair and equitable has overridden the concept of right, the concept of what is just, the concept of truth, even. In this particular case, and this is where I may get in trouble, the difference between the sexes and the historical precedence of the issues revolving around these kinds of matters, in particular, battered woman, the historical patriarchal oppression of females, the physical difference in the strength of males and females. That is exactly what Johnny Depp had to overcome to win this trial. This is the little elephant in the room that most people, I think, are afraid to talk about because they don't want to get in trouble. I am absolutely not denying anything I just mentioned about the historical oppression of females in this sort of patriarchal society that is male dominated. Okay. Nevertheless, this does not in any logical or reasonable sense exclude the concept, idea, or reality that many men can be abused, are abused, and can be oppressed by the opposite sex. I know I'm going to piss a lot of people off. In this particular case, it's clear he's older, he's a male, he is much more well to do than she is, and he had to overcome all of that to prove his case. And he did. Nevertheless, there's a lot of chatterbox going on behind about these issues that I brought up that are just to me sort of nonsense when people are saying, I heard a couple of things. This is one of the worst things that could have happened to a woman's rights. Uh, but what is the positive in this? For me, what I see is a couple of really special things. In the spotlight of the world, and I'm hoping judges, attorneys, and law enforcement, and family courts in particular, are able to see, as his lawyers worked out in great clarity and detail, probably at a cost of millions, the potential toxicity and absolute destruction of a pathological cluster B personality, which to me appeared to be a lot of narcissistic behavior, but that's just some thoughts that I had. What these people can do, A, in general, and B, there are females that can do this. And these females, by sometimes really utilizing the historical oppression against females, their physical demeanor, and oftentimes the social status differential between them and the male involved, they will completely destroy somebody by utilizing victimhood and triangulation. So that is a mental health issue. I am hoping it was brought to the forefront of A, the legal system, and in particular the family court system, B, law enforcement, and C, society at large. Two, I'm hoping that we see the concept of being equitable or fair doesn't necessarily mean we'll give him his voice, give her her voice. Each person has their opinion. The truth is somewhere down the middle. No. Okay. This was a person under an incredible amount of stress, pressure from all of the abuse, constantly being set up, using language, using videos, using pictures, using all sorts of people around them to constantly put this guy in a fear and stress response mode to cover his ass. That doesn't mean this doesn't go on with females. That doesn't mean historically women have not been oppressed, abused physically, abused emotionally, kept down by societal structures, and even held back from jobs, education, and their full potential growth. But what we're seeing nowadays quite often is something that is quite reversed, quite frightening, quite toxic, and absolutely corrosive and destructive. From the men and the women that suffer from these things, and in this case, we're talking about a situation where it's males suffering. In particular, in the family court system, who I feel the worst for And who our hearts should go out to are the children of these people, the young children of these people, because we are setting them up for adverse childhood events, which leads to substance abuse, which leads to anxiety, depression, personality disorders, joblessness, going to prison, emotional dysregulation, and so on. So I feel it was a mixed bag in terms of doing something positive for substance abuse, because many people may get the wrong impression, no fault of Johnny Depp's. At the same time, in terms of mental health, this might have been Johnny Depp's greatest contribution in his entire life, or whatever he's done, is he, in a public way, made the world aware of the absolute chaos, destruction, and cold heartlessness of someone with pathological personality disorder, and the way they are able to manipulate people, the system, law enforcement, and in this case, their female sex status, to get as far as they can and destroy people's lives. Thank you for watching. I will be getting back to you very soon. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, like it, subscribe to the channel, and consider us on Patreon. More videos are coming out. Otherwise, give me your thoughts and feedback in the discussions below, whether you agree with what I say or not. And some of you might hate me for this. Have a great night.